What's up, everyone? Blake here. It's December, and I figured now would be a good time to do a quick update on the Pinguicula collection. Yeah, as you can see, a good percentage of the plants are currently in flower, so I'm going to try to do some pollination here, and um, I'm still fairly new to Pinguicula pollination, so I tend to kind of damage the flowers a little bit, so it's also a good time to capture all of these flowers before I you know, do my little hummingbird work on them. So let's get into the plants. First one here, this is BCP Goldeneye. This plant, like a lot of my Pinguicula right now, is currently dividing. I've also taken a couple of pullings of this one, so hopefully I can start to share that one around a little bit more because this is an awesome plant. Speaking of an awesome plants, this is probably one of the coolest Pinguiculas in my collection. This is Pinguicula Raspberry Blonde. I recently obtained this from Carnivoro um, this past spring. It's got some beautiful red foliage, very similar in shape to the Gigantea crosslawiana red next to it. Um, but the foliage is really kind of second fiddle to the flowers. This is the real reason why this is one of the most spectacular cultivars out there. This is pretty crazy coloration for a Pinguicula flower. You've got this nice kind of creamy yellow flower with these streaks of purple going through it. It's an awesome, awesome plant and one that I'm definitely going to try to make some hybrids with here. So um, if you haven't already, head on over to icps.org. Or sorry, no, it's carnivorousplants.org. ICPS is the International Carnivorous Plant Society. That's where the cultivar description for this plant here is located, and I highly suggest you go check that out because it's an awesome plant. Uh, and then right next to that, like I kind of quickly mentioned, is Gigantea crosslawiana red. This plant hasn't flowered for me yet, but hopefully in this next season I can get a nice little flower out of it. It's starting to do kind of a Gigantea sort of dormancy where it doesn't go fully dormant, but the leaves kind of get a little bit smaller and more compact without making like a super compact rosette of succulent leaves. So it's very, very kind of pulling on the Gigantea um, parentage there. Next to that is Morinensis J. This is another one of my all-time favorite plants here. Very similar coloration to the Gigantea crosslawiana red, but just kind of a different flavor of that. You also get these really beautiful veins in the leaves. This is one of my favorite features of the plant. It's very, very distinct. It's also quite floriferous. Yeah. There's a lot of flowers here. Um, this plant has 4 flowers on it. They're all quite large. Very kind of typical Morinensis type flower, but beautiful plant there. Next to that, we have Wawapan. This has gone dormant, or it's in its succulent phase. Flowers are quite spectacular on it, but right now it's taking a little break. And next to that, we have another cool hybrid here. This is Morinensis var alba malongo crossed with Cyclosecta. You can definitely see the Cyclosecta coming through in the purple coloration of the leaves. And also the flowers. It has this kind of indigo colored flower that you get with Cyclosecta and some of its hybrids. Another pretty cool plant here. This one has also been dividing quite a bit for me, and so I'll probably be making some divisions after I try to pollinate this guy. And the plant next to that has actually gone absolutely crazy with dividing. This is Morinensis A. So this is the red-leafed Morinensis variety that's out there. Tons and tons of divisions on it. Can't even really see the pot that it's in, so I'm going to have to probably split that up soon. Pretty typical Morinensis flower coloration. A bit smaller than the Morinensis J, which I just showed you again over here. This is the Morinensis J flower compared to the Morinensis A flower, which is a bit smaller and has this really extended bottom lobe of the petal. It's kind of interesting. Another red plant. This is kind of a row of red plants here. This is Ognata redleaf. Very popular cultivar of Ognata that has bright red leaves, as the name would suggest, but also um, the the dew on the leaves is a bit more pronounced than your typical Pinguicula, and so it really kind of catches the light a bit more and makes the plant look like it's just like covered in sugar or something like that. It's a really cool plant. The flowers aren't anything incredible. This one is pretty faded. The flowers actually fade pretty quickly, almost going to, completely white with a yellow interior. But you can kind of see the ring of purple that they typically start off with. Um, Kind of cool. This plant next door is actually an Ognata redleaf hybrid. So this is Ognata redleaf crossed with a marginata. So there's a marginata back there. Ognata redleaf over here. And here's the baby. So I don't know how this plant got so large. These leaves are insane, especially for being in a marginata hybrid. Something interesting is happening there. You also have the kind of characteristic Ognata red leaf leaves and dew on it as well. Very, very cool. Oh, accidentally cut the video as I was zooming out. Very attractive plant here. You can see, similar to the Ognata red leaf, the flowers tend to fade a little bit. So that's a faded one. Here is kind of a fresh flower. It's got this nice, super intense purple coloration that, has that typical marginata pattern. That's a marginata back there. Let me see if I can get a good shot. So you can see the marginata flower pattern pull through, and then similar to the Ognata red leaf, it fades to almost white. Back behind that, we've got a cyclosecta. So this I got as a division from a friend not too long ago. It was quite small when I got it. Cyclosecta is not a very large species, but this one still has a ways to go still until it hits flowering stage for me. Similar story here with these Lawiana California carnivores red, or Calcarn red. So this is a Lawiana that California carnivores bred specifically to have super bright red flowers. Lawiana already is known for its red flowers, and these are supposed to be redder than red can get, or something to that effect. So really excited for these, again, to kind of grow up and get to flowering size. Should be pretty interesting. Next to that, we have Morinensis F. orchidioides. So this is another Morinensis variety. This is one that grows next to the species Orchidioides and has very similar flower structure to the Orchidioides species, hence its name Morinensis F. orchidioides. Nice little example of convergent evolution and selection pressure of plants in nature. So kind of a cool plant. It's obviously dormant right now. I've taken a few pullings from it. Hopefully I can get those to take and just start to share that out, because this is an awesome plant, especially for its flowers. And back behind that, again, we have a marginata. So I showed you this a few times already. Got these really small leaves, really small plant in general, but flowers pretty consistently for me. So great little species. And then the last one in this tray, this is Anpa C. So I have 3 of these plants. Only one of them is flowering right now, but the whole reason I like this plant so much is because its flowers are so unique. This is another one that I'm going to try to do some breeding with here. So hopefully we can get some cool things going on with that. Moving over to the other tray. In the back here, I actually have 2 different Gigantea. On the left this is just a typical Gigantea that I have. It's actually quite small for Gigantea, and it's kind of doing its winter Gigantea thing where the leaves kind of reduce in size a little bit without going fully succulent. But then next to that, this is Gigantea Red Flush, or Red Blush. So this is the winter blushing form of Gigantea. You can see a little bit of red speckling on the leaves. I actually recently took some pullings of this, so hopefully I can get some clones going of this, but this is a cool plant where the red coloration really comes out in cooler temperatures. And I actually recently moved my ping collection down into my basement where it gets down into the low 60s at night. And that seems to be bringing out a bit more of the red coloration in this plant. So really cool plant. Next row of plants here, we actually have two clones of Pinguicula aphrodite. So this is just a nice little strappy common Pinguicula hybrid. The flowers aren't anything too spectacular, kind of purpley colored. Nothing real remarkable, but the leaves are kind of pretty, and it's a very prolific plant too. So I kind of keep it around to take pullings of and spread around. It's always a great kind of starter Pinguicula. Speaking of starter Pinguiculas, I have a little tiny pulling of Pinguicula Weiser. Recently split up and sold off a bunch of my Weiser divisions, so this was one that I kept for myself to just kind of keep the line going. And here in the middle, this is Gigantea crossed with Moctezuma. So you can see Moctezuma coming out in kind of the long, strappy kind of leaves, but they're a little bit thicker due to the Gigantea, as well as the leaves, or sorry, the flowers. So this has two flowers on it. These are probably the biggest ping flowers that I have on any of my plants at the moment. Just awesome for their size. Another one that I might try to breed with just because of these giant flowers. And now we're getting into kind of the more compact pings in my collection. So right here, this is Pinguicula assyriana, a classic compact ping species that I just love. Next to that, these are some pullings. I think they are Gigantea crosslawiana red, which is, again, this plant over here. I took some pullings and they were just kind of sitting in my propagation tray and they were unlabeled, so I wasn't exactly sure what they were, but I'm pretty sure they're Gigantea crosslawiana red. So we'll just kind of keep that tag tentative until they grow it a little bit more and can get a more positive ID on them. Next to that, this is Pinguicula honca. So this is another kind of more common hybrid that you see out there. I recently split up and sold off a bunch of my divisions of this as well and kind of decided to just keep one to keep that chain of divisions going. Next to that, if I can kind of show between the flowers and tags, this is Pinguicula condoi, another nice compact Pinguicula. This is Pinguicula lawiana tangerine, another California carnivores lawiana cultivar with a more tangerine colored flower. So this one is obviously quite small and it is obviously succulent, so nothing really to show at the moment. This is one of my all-time favorites as well. This is Pinguicula Eucadou 1713. Probably one of my absolute favorite of the more compact Pinguicula. I don't know quite how to describe it, but there's just something about the morphology that checks every box for me when it comes to the more compact Pinguicula. These are still quite small. I got them as some divisions from someone off Facebook, so absolutely love this one. And next to that is Pinguicula Pirouet. This is a super common hybrid cultivar that's out there. This one's doing a lot better than it was in my last video. My last video, I tipped over the pot a few times and it looked kind of like a jumbled mess, and now I've got it repotted into some fresh media and it's looking a lot more settled and less disheveled. Up front here, we're getting to the end now. This is Pinguicula gracilis, another more diminutive species. And I don't know if it's the species in general, but this particular clone that I have produces really insanely short flower stalks. So as you may know, Pinguicula typically produce flower stalks that are, somewhere around 4 to 6 inches in length. For whatever reason, this gracilis will produce a flower stalk that's only about an inch or maybe even less. So the flower is basically sitting right on top of the plant. It's really bizarre. You can see it's kind of working on a flower right now. Flower itself isn't that remarkable. It's pretty much all white, but the way that it flowers is kind of unique. Another classic rosetted Pinguicula. This is Pinguicula Ehler-Z Victoria that I got from Curious Plant. Just a spectacular, compact Pinguicula. Very, very charismatic. And then last but not least, this is a pot of Pinguicula wamavensis. So my mother plant eventually, it essentially divided itself to death. And so these are some pullings that I took from the mother plant probably about 2 years ago now. The biggest ones are about 2 years old. So it's pretty slow grower, but it's a very, very beautiful plant nonetheless. These are about the size, or a little bit smaller than the mother plant was when I got it. So hopefully, I never got to see flowers on the mother plant, so hopefully I can see some flowers on these ones before they, start their division death cycle that the mother plant went through not too long ago. One thing I should mention too is you can see it especially in these or smaller Pinguicula. I'm using a new Pinguicula mix. So I recently started to incorporate fluval stratum into the mix for my Pinguicula just as a way to retain a bit more moisture in the mix without using peat. Peat, as many of you may know, becomes quite hydrophobic and difficult to rehydrate once it's been dried out. In Pinguicula cultivation, a lot of us like to let the water trays dry out for a few days between waterings so that the plants aren't completely waterlogged all the time. And so I like fluval stratum because it's an aquarium substrate that tends to hold quite a bit of moisture, but it doesn't have some of the hydration issues that come along with using peat. I also try to use peat as little as possible due to kind of sustainability concerns. So of course with peat, and essentially I just mix in an extra portion of fluval stratum into my base Pinguicula mix. So right now the ratios that I'm using are 2 parts Akadama, 1 part perlite, 1 part pumice, and 1 part fluval stratum. I've also switched to using the 1/8 inch size pumice from previously I was using 1/4 inch size pumice, which was a little bit too chunky for Pinguicula, I think. Pings have pretty small root systems, so I was finding that the 1/4 inch size pumice was a little bit too large. So this 1/8 inch size kind of creates a nice uniform medium size throughout the entire medium. So the fluval stratum is also, if you can see kind of the darker, almost black portions of the mix, that's the fluval stratum that you're seeing. You may also notice there's a little kind of white mildew covering the surface of the media right now. That's something I'm still trying to figure out a good solution for. I've been kind of spraying it down with water to kind of just temporarily get rid of it, but I think it's just due to the fact that the fluval stratum mixed into my medium is causing more water to retain longer, so I might have to start letting these dry out a little bit longer in between waterings. Previously, I was letting them dry out for about a day, and I might have to bump that up to 2 or 3 days perhaps, just to kind of allow that medium to dry out completely, and so we're not getting some of this mold and mildew on top. It's not really going to harm the plants, but it's not very sightly and something that I would like to keep under control. So that's all that I have for you today. Just again wanted to get a nice little update before I go on my hummingbird pollination route here. So hope you all enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.